Lost the sign. There isn't a sign-up sheet because we signed up before. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then sit down.
We don't know who you are. No, we got the sign-up sheet right here. You signed it already.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
realized. Sorry.
All right, ready?
Yes. Good afternoon, Senator Saviello, Representative Welsh, members of the Environment and Natural Resources Committee. My name is Nick Bennett. I'm the staff scientist for the Natural Resources Council of Maine. I am testifying in opposition to the list of proposals to amend LD 750. Previously, I testified in opposition to LD 146 and in support of the original 750. As you can see, my testimony is pretty long, so I'm not going to go through all of the comments, but I'll highlight a few that we think are particularly important. We support proposals 14 and 15. Those are the proposals dealing with financial assurance. We think those proposals are reasonable and would, in fact, place the burden for payment for cleaning up a mining disaster where it belongs, which is on the mining company and not on the taxpayers of Maine. So we support those two provisions. We oppose provision number 17. Don't really understand it. First, as we read Title 12, Chapter 201A, it allows mining on all state-owned public lands. We oppose mining on public lands and believe the committee should amend or eliminate Title 12, Chapter 201A, which dates from 1985. Also, the statement in 17 reading, "No mining shall be conducted in or on public reserve lands, but not including public reserve lots described in Title 12, Section 1801-8A. That seems to be from the rules as proposed first last year and then again this year, and it doesn't make sense to me after all the times I've read it, because public reserved lands and public reserve lots are defined as the same thing in 1801-8A. And if the committee means consolidated lots and unconsolidated lots, it's going to need to define those, because those are not defined in statute. We know what they are, but they're not defined in statute. And this public reserved lot is not the same thing as an unconsolidated lot. And public reserved land is not the same thing as a consolidated public lot. So you're going to have to fix that up because it's not clear. I think probably the most confusing, maybe for the committee members themselves, but also for those watching the committee like me, has been the discussions around wet mine waste unit and tailings impoundments. Tailings are wet. Impoundments are a hole that you use to hold a liquid. How is a tailings impoundment not a wet mine waste unit? Tailings are wet. They're mine waste. If you need an impoundment for them, that's another sign they're wet. I guess I'm over my time.
3 more minutes.
Okay.
3 more minutes.
That's another sign they're wet. A wet mine waste unit and a tailings pond are the same thing. I just want to read a quote that underscores this. The mining industry in British Columbia is in the process of constructing a number of large mine waste impoundments contained by large dams, and given robust conditions within the industry, more such facilities are being planned. In many instances, these impoundments are required to maintain a state of permanent submergence to prevent acid rock drainage from the impounded tailings and waste rock. Much has been learned in how to properly characterize and manage these wastes and how to construct the dams required to contain and flood them. British Columbia has made substantial contributions to this body of knowledge, experience, and evolving practice. What has been learned and incorporated into the construction of these mine waste impoundments will be the mining industry's bequest to future generations. The principles of sustainability mandate that we consider fully today and in the future the nature of that bequest, how best to manage it, and how it is likely to become to be viewed and managed by future generations. For there is never an inopportune moment to step back and contemplate what we are doing today and planning for tomorrow. In BC, provincial MLARD guidelines observe that for subaqueous disposal underwater, to effectively prevent ARD over the long term, the storage location must remain permanently flooded, and geotechnically stable. And this gets to the point that I've been trying to make, that tailings impoundments are permanent facilities on the landscape. I would say, I know that you've been handed pretty pictures of tailings impoundments that are supposedly remediated. They have wetlands plants on them. They have an egret on them. What does that say? It says they're wet. I didn't see that you got much information about those remediated ponds. Ask Mr. Butler for the details about that. How were those tailings managed during the life of the mine? Were they pasted? Was it dry tailings? Were there drains at the bottom of the tailings impoundment to allow them to be drained? If not, I suspect what you've got there is a wetland cover. And a wetland cover is wet. That means it's vulnerable if the tailings dam fails. The surface may be drier, but there's still a tailings slurry underneath that surface, and you have to have that tailings dam last in perpetuity. Maybe the most important thing is that the vast majority of tailings dams, including, the vast majority of tailings dam failures, more than 80%, according to one study, occur during the life of the mine. So even if you could magically dewater tailings impoundments when you're done with mining, that's not going to get you over the biggest part of the risk. The study that I've cited here says that more than 80% of tailings dam failures occur when the mine is active. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Yes.
Have you been to Callahan Mine?
Yes,
Those two impoundments, are those tailings impoundments that you walk in on?
I'm not sure.
I think they are. They're pretty dry. I just want to know. Maybe I'll try to find out myself between now and the work session, but as you come right in the right-hand side of the site, those two big, I was told when I was down there, the two big ones are tailing, and the next one's a rock waste pile.
Yeah, I've really never figured out exactly
I'll find out.
how those things were. You know, I've never had someone explain to me what all the different piles are and holes are.
Yeah, when I was down, but I'll find out, because I believe the first one is a tailings impoundment.
And maybe that tailings impoundment had its dam breach.
I don't think so.
Would have read about it.
Would have read about it,
Other questions?
because it had a breach right into the river.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Welsh and members of the committee, for inviting us to be heard. Our public trust in you as our elected representatives is that when faced with decisions, the question you hold front and center in your minds is what's in it for the people of Maine. When a corporation that wants to profit from mining instigates new regulations in our state, we need to trust that uppermost in your minds is not what's in it for the company, how can we best support them, but what's in it for the people of Maine, how can we best support them. What's in it for the people of Maine? Jobs. There's no doubt we need jobs in Maine, but history tells us right here in Maine that industry's promises have been overblown. The Black Hawk mine in Blue Hill provided less than a quarter of the jobs promised for less than half the time estimated by the company. Since then, unskilled labor is more mechanized, so less jobs, and technologically skilled labor is usually imported from mining states. What's in it for the people of Maine? In March, I joined a delegation to El Salvador to look at the experience with precious metal mining and to gain perspective on what might be in it for us. The first stop was San Sebastian. I was shaken, really heartbroken by what I saw in this community that had been mined from 1904 to the 1980s, open pit mining. In this photo of their river that runs through the town, you can see this is the color of acid mine drainage. It's a dead river now. Numerous scientists have testified before you of Maine's special vulnerabilities to acid mine drainage. Nothing lives in their river. This extremely poor community now has no water safe for drinking or even for washing. Contamination has made traditional subsistence farming impossible. No one in this town spoke up for the jobs that had been provided by mining. The community has lost hope. Our last stop was Bangor's sister city, the village of Karaske, where municipal elections were considering a local ban on mining. They'd done their homework. They visited mining sites that were labeled by the companies as green mining, modern mining, in El Salvador, in Guatemala, and Honduras, talking to the communities about their gains and losses. There's no question the people of Karaske are in desperate need of jobs, yet 98% of the municipality voted for the ban on mining because the devastation they'd seen in the communities that had been mined far outweighed the promise of jobs. I urge you to send LD 750 to the legislature as originally written by Representative Chapman without amendments. Doing so will protect the watershed that we and future generations depend upon for life and economic well-being, and will do what we elected you to do, make this decision in terms of what's in it for the people of Maine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Cates. Questions, Representative Campbell? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. My name is Dick Campbell. I represent District 130, which is Bucksport and Orrington. And yes, I became a grandfather this weekend.
Congratulations.
I'm not quite old enough, but cute little kid.
I know the feeling.
Thank you so much for sharing. It must have been an incredible trip. Did you get a chance to review their regulations or not at the time?
The country right now has a moratorium on mining based on some of the horrors that had happened in the country. There's a push for a national ban on mining because of it. It's a very tiny country. It's the size of Massachusetts with a huge population. The watershed that goes everywhere, the watershed that is wanting to be mined. And they're also the countries at risk now because they're being sued for lost future profits by the companies that wanted to mine, and now there's a moratorium. So
do you know if they had regulations prior to this or not?
If they'd had any regulations there, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I do know that there were regulations in some of the surrounding countries they'd visited and had got that mining, the supposedly green mining in. It's hard to tell what will happen.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator Saviello, Representative Welch, and members of the committee. My name is Lou Kingsbury, and I live in Pittston, Maine. I'm going to try it a little differently this time. What you have before you is an excerpt from the rules that was issued by the BEP on January 3rd, 2014. A week later, these were the same rules that went to the legislature per the statute. And if you look down under mining excluded, the mining excluded rules that was provided by the DEP to the BEP can be found under paragraphs A, B, C, D, and G with no strike-throughs. They, in essence, precluded any mining on public lands in the state. So the original out of the box from the DEP was you cannot mine on any public lands in the state. That was changed by EF and then ultimately E and D with the strike-throughs. That was done by the BEP. It was done as a minor substantive change. It didn't get any discussion by the committee. It didn't have any public input. It showed up on this date, 1/3/2014. Now, I believe somebody in the DEP that put all these rules together understood that there was and you've heard it from Jane Edwards, there was a constitutional amendment made, Article 9, Section 23 on the next page, that gave a rule that said that if you create a bill, 598, and you list all the designated lands, public lands under that bill, they are for conservation and recreational purposes only. But if you want to remove something from that list to use it for some other purpose, like mining, it takes a 2/3 vote of the elected members of each house. Now, we know that Dan, as legal analyst, went and reviewed all of these other laws that have been put into effect